The CEO froze when he saw three tiny bodies curled up outside his office, with a heartbreaking note pinned to their blanket. Beloved listener, before we dive into this interesting, inspiring story, comment below where you're watching from. In downtown Chicago, tall glass buildings reach up to touch the clouds. One building stands taller than the rest, the Hans Corporation Tower. Inside the fancy office on the 40th floor, Edward Hans sits behind his big wooden desk. He wears expensive suits and shiny black shoes. His gray hair is always perfect, and his blue eyes look serious most of the time. Edward is 45 years old. He built his company from nothing when he was just 22. Back then, he lived in a tiny apartment and ate soup for dinner every night. He worked 18 hours every day, dreaming of success. Now, 23 years later, he owns the biggest marketing company in Illinois. He has 3 fancy cars, a mansion in Lake Forest, and more money than he can count. But Edward lives alone. He never married. He has no children. His big house feels empty when he comes home each night. Sometimes, late at night, he wonders if all his money and success really matter. He thinks about his mother, who died 5 years ago. He wishes she was still here to give him her warm hugs. Across town, in a small apartment in Pilsen, 3 little kids are getting ready for bed. Their names are Emma, Ethan, and Ella. They are 7 years old and look exactly the same. Emma has curly brown hair with a pink ribbon. Ethan wears a superhero t-shirt that's too big for him. Ella carries a stuffed elephant everywhere she goes. The triplets live with their mom, Aurora. She is 29 years old with kind brown eyes and a gentle smile. Aurora works 2 jobs to take care of her babies. During the day, she cleans offices for the rich guys. At night, she works at a diner on Roosevelt Road, serving coffee and pie to late-night customers. She comes home tired every night, but she always has energy to read bedtime stories to her children. Aurora never had it easy. When the triplets were babies, their father left them. He said 3 kids were too much work. Aurora cried for many nights, but she never gave up. She worked harder than anyone to make sure her children had food, clothes, and love. Lots and lots of love. Beloved listener, if this story is already tugging at your heart, imagine how much more emotional it gets. Don't miss a single moment of this incredible journey. Hit that subscribe button now. Those who don't subscribe will be kicking themselves when they realize they missed out on the most beautiful story your heart will thank you for. 3 weeks ago, something terrible happened. Aurora lost her job at the office cleaning company. Her boss said they didn't need her anymore. Aurora felt scared and worried. She had saved some money, but it wasn't much. She looked for new jobs every day, but nobody wanted to hire her. She filled out applications at stores, restaurants, and offices. She waited by the phone, hoping someone would call, but nobody did. The rent money was running out. Aurora counted her dollars every night after the triplets went to sleep. She had enough money for 2 more weeks, maybe 3 if she was very careful. She didn't tell the children about the problem. She kept smiling and making their favorite meals. But inside, her heart was breaking. The triplets could tell something was wrong. They saw their mom looking sad when she thought they weren't watching. They heard her talking quietly on the phone, asking for more time to pay bills. They loved their mom more than anything in the world. They wanted to help her, but they didn't know how. Winter was coming to Chicago. Soon, the wind would be cold and harsh. Aurora looked out the window at the big buildings downtown. Somewhere in those tall towers, people were making decisions about jobs and money. She wished someone would give her a chance to show how hard she could work. The triplets watched their mom and made a secret plan. They whispered to each other when she wasn't listening. They had an idea that might help. It was a big idea, a brave idea, and maybe a little bit crazy. But when you love someone as much as they loved their mom, you're willing to try anything. Neither Edward Hans nor the triplets knew that their 2 different worlds were about to crash together in the most unexpected way. Thursday night came like any other night, but it would be different from all the rest. Aurora tucked her 3 babies into bed, kissing each of their foreheads softly. But she couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table with a stack of bills in front of her. She picked up the rent notice. It said she had to pay $800 by Saturday or they would have to move out. Aurora put her head in her hands and cried. She had knocked on every door in the neighborhood looking for work. She had called every number in the phone book. She had even asked her mean neighbor, Mrs. Clarks, for help, but she just slammed the door in her face. What am I gonna do? Aurora whispered to herself, how can I tell my babies we might have to live in our car? But in the next room, 3 little ears were listening. The kids heard everything. They heard their mom crying. They heard her talking about living in a car. They heard her say she didn't know what to do. Emma sat up in her bed. Her heart was beating fast like a drum. We can't let Mommy lose our home, she whispered to her siblings. Ethan was scared, but he nodded. We have to do something to help out, he said. Ella clutched her teddy bear tighter. Remember what teacher Mrs. Johnson said? She said when grown-ups can't fix something, sometimes kids have to be brave. Emma had been thinking about her plan all day. She remembered seeing a big glass building downtown when they rode the bus to visit the free clinic. She remembered her mom pointing at it and saying, that's where all the rich people work. We're going to that big building tomorrow, Emma announced. We're going to find the biggest boss and ask him to hire Mommy. Ethan pushed his glasses up. But Emma, we don't even know his name. It doesn't matter, Emma said. We'll wait outside until he comes. All important people go to work early. Mommy told me that. The 3 kids made a secret pact. They would sneak out before their mom woke up. They would take the bus downtown with the money from Ethan's piggy bank. They would wait for the biggest boss to arrive, and then they would ask him to save their family. Friday morning came too soon. Aurora's alarm clock buzzed at 6 a.m., but something was wrong. The house was too quiet. She rushed to the kids' bedroom and found 3 empty beds. On Emma's pillow was a note written in crayon. Dear Mommy, we went to get you a job. Don't worry, we will be back soon. Love, Emma, Ethan, and Ella. Aurora screamed so loud that Mrs. Clark's next door called the police. Aurora's hands were shaking as she dialed 911. Her babies were missing. Her heart felt like it was going to explode. Meanwhile, downtown at the Hands Industries building, 3 small figures sat huddled together on the cold concrete steps. They had been there since 5 a.m., waiting in the darkness. Emma had brought her favorite blanket, the one with pink flowers that Grandma made before she died. Ethan had brought his superhero backpack with some crackers inside. Ella had brought her teddy bear and nothing else. Right now, 3 little kids are out in the cold, risking everything to save their family, while their mother is probably crying and calling the police, desperate to find them. If you can scroll past that and not hit subscribe, maybe you're the reason children have to become heroes in the first place. The morning was freezing cold. Chicago winters are mean and bitter. The wind cut through their small jackets like ice knives. But the 3 kids stayed strong. They took turns keeping watch for the important boss man who would save their mommy. I'm scared, Ella whispered around. Her lips were turning blue. Me too, Ethan admitted. But we can't give up. Mommy needs us. Emma was the strongest. She was born 2 minutes before her siblings, so she felt like the big sister. We're going to wait here until someone helps us, she said, even if it takes all day. But they were just babies. 6-year-old children shouldn't have to worry about rent money. They shouldn't have to sleep on cold concrete steps. They shouldn't have to save their families. That's supposed to be the grown-ups' job. As the sun started to rise over Chicago, people began walking past the Han's Industries building. Business people in fancy suits hurried by without looking down. Nobody noticed 3 small children sleeping on the steps. At 7:15 a.m., a shiny black Mercedes pulled up to the building. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Edward Hands. He was wearing a perfect gray suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He was thinking about his morning meeting and checking his expensive watch. But then he saw them. 3 tiny children curled up together like puppies, sleeping on his building's steps. At first, Edward thought maybe he was seeing things, but no. There they were. Real children. Edward's heart stopped beating for a moment. He hadn't seen anything like this since he was a kid himself, sleeping in his car with his mom after they got evicted from their apartment. Attached to the pink blanket was a piece of paper. Edward bent down and read it. In Emma's careful handwriting, it said, "Please hire our mom. She is the best mom in the world. We need help." Edward Hans, the man who never cried, felt tears in his eyes. The man who had forgotten how to care about other people suddenly remembered what it felt like to be small and scared and desperate. Slowly, very slowly, he knelt down beside Emma. He touched her shoulder gently. "Hey there, little one," he whispered. "Wake up." Emma's eyes opened wide, slightly scared. For a second, she thought she was dreaming. A tall man in a fancy suit was looking at her with kind eyes. This had to be him, the big boss who would save their family. "Are you the boss of this building?" Emma asked, sitting up straight. Her voice was brave, but her whole body was shaking from the cold. "Yes, I am," Edward said softly. "My name is Edward. What's your name?" "I'm Emma. This is my brother Ethan and my sister Ella," she said, shaking her siblings awake. "We've been waiting for you." Ethan rubbed his eyes and pushed his glasses up his nose. Ella clutched her teddy bear and hid behind Emma. They were scared, but determined. "You slept here all night?" Edward felt his heart crack like broken glass. "Where are your parents? Where's your mom?" "She's at home crying," Emma said. "She lost her job and we're going to lose our house. We came to ask you to hire her. She's the best mom in the whole world." Edward looked at these three tiny warriors who had spent a freezing night on concrete steps just to help their mother. He thought about his own childhood, sleeping in his mom's old fort when they had nowhere else to go. "Come on," Edward said, standing up. "Let's get you somewhere warm, then we'll figure this out." But as they walked toward the building, Edward's assistant manager, Mr. Peterson, came rushing out. Mr. Peterson was a mean man who hated anything that wasn't perfect and orderly. "Mr. Hans, what are you doing with these street children?" Mr. Peterson said with a nasty voice. "They're probably dirty. They might have diseases. Security should have removed them hours ago." Edward felt anger rise up in his chest like hot lava. "These children are not street children, Peterson. They're brave kids who need help." "Sir, think about your reputation," Mr. Peterson continued. "What will the board members say? What will your important clients think? One more word from you, and I'll turn your house into a roof over their head," Edward replied angrily. "Every single day, there are Mr. Petersons in this world who look at struggling families and see problems instead of people. If you won't subscribe to stand against this heartless attitude, then you're basically agreeing with him. Don't be a Mr. Peterson. Be an Edward. Hit that subscribe button and prove you have a heart." Meanwhile, across town, Aurora was having the worst morning of her entire life. She had called the police, but they said kids had to be missing for 24 hours before they could do anything. She had called her sister in Texas, but her sister couldn't be of help. She had even called her ex-husband who left them 3 years ago, but he didn't answer. Aurora ran through the streets of Chicago like a crazy person. She checked every playground, every park, every corner store. She asked everyone she saw if they had seen 3 small children. Most people just walked away from her. At the Chicago PD South Side station, Detective Maria Lopez was drinking her morning coffee when a frantic woman burst through the doors. Aurora's hair was messy, her clothes were wrinkled, and tears were streaming down her face. "Please, you have to help me," Aurora cried. "My babies are missing. They're only 6 years old. They left me a note saying they went to get me a job, but I don't know where they are." Detective Lopez had been a cop for 15 years. She had seen and heard all sorts of stories, but something about this mother's pain touched her heart. "Ma'am, calm down. Tell me everything from the beginning." Aurora sat in the hard plastic chair and told her story. She told about losing her job, about the eviction notice, about her children hearing her cry. She told about finding the empty beds and the crayon note. "My kids are smart," Aurora said, wiping her nose with a tissue. "Too smart for their own good. Emma probably thought she could solve everything by finding some rich person to help us." Detective Lopez wrote down every detail. She had 3 kids of her own, and she knew exactly how Aurora felt. "We're going to find them," she promised. "I'm going to put out an alert to every patrol car in the city." Back at the Hans Industries building, Edward had taken the 3 children to his private office on the 40th floor. He ordered hot chocolate and donuts from the fancy restaurant downstairs. Emma, Ethan, and Ella sat on his expensive leather couch, looking tiny and scared. "This is the biggest room I've ever seen," Ethan whispered, looking around at all the fancy furniture. "It's bigger than our whole apartment," Ella said quietly. Edward felt ashamed. His office was huge and empty, just like his life. These children's small apartment was probably full of more love than he had ever felt in this luxurious building. "Tell me about your mom," Edward said, sitting down across from them. Emma's whole face lit up. "She's the best mom ever. She reads us stories every night. She makes the best pancakes in Chicago. When we're sick, she stays up all night taking care of us. She works really hard," Ethan added. "Sometimes she comes home so tired she falls asleep at the kitchen table." "She sings to us when we're scared," Ella said, hugging her teddy bear. "She says everything will be okay, even when it's not." Edward felt something he hadn't felt in years. His heart was growing warm. These children loved their mother so much, they were willing to risk everything for her. But then Mr. Peterson knocked on the door. "Mr. Hans, I've called Child Protective Services. They're sending someone to pick up these children. We can't have them disrupting business." Emma, Ethan, and Ella looked terrified. They had heard scary stories about kids being taken away from their families. "Please don't let them take us," Emma begged. "We just want to go home to our mommy." Edward stood up tall. His eyes were angry and fierce. "Peterson, you're fired. Get out of my building right now." "But sir, I was just trying to—" "Get out," Edward shouted, "and cancel that call to Child Services immediately." As Mr. Peterson left the office, Edward turned back to the children. He made a decision that would change everything. "I'm going to find your mom," he said, "and I'm going to make sure your family never has to worry about money again." Down at the police station, Detective Lopez was getting ready to search every downtown building when her radio crackled. "All units, we have a report of 3 missing children possibly spotted at the Hans Industries building on State Street." Aurora's heart stopped. "That's them," she whispered. "That has to be them." At the Hans Industries building, the security guard at the front desk was a big man named Frank. He had worked there for 10 years and never let anyone upstairs without permission. "Ma'am, you can't go up there," Frank said when Aurora burst through the front doors. "This is a private building." "Those are my children up there," Aurora screamed. "I'm their mother. You can't keep me from them." Detective Lopez showed her badge. "Sir, we need to get this mother to her children right now. They've been missing all night." Frank looked confused. He had been told by Mr. Peterson earlier that morning to call Child Services if anyone came looking for the kids. But Mr. Peterson was gone now, and Frank had to make his own choice. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Frank said, but his voice was shaking. "I have my orders." Aurora fell to her knees right there in the fancy lobby. She started crying so hard her whole body shook. "Please," she begged, "I just want to hold my babies. I just want to tell them I'm sorry they had to sleep outside because I couldn't take care of them." Frank had never seen anything so heartbreaking in his entire life. This mother wasn't some crazy person. She was just a woman who loved her children more than anything in the world. Meanwhile, up on the 40th floor, Edward was on the phone with his lawyer. "I don't care about the legal complications," Edward said angrily. "I want to hire this woman today, right now." "Mr. Hans, you can't just hire someone without interviews, background checks, references," his lawyer said. "The board will think you've lost your mind." "Maybe I have lost my mind," Edward said, "but these children shouldn't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from." Emma was listening to every word. She tugged on Edward's expensive suit jacket. "Mr. Edward, are you really going to give our mommy a job?" Edward knelt down so he was eye level with Emma. "I'm going to do more than that, sweetheart. I'm going to make sure your family never has to be scared again." But just then, the elevator doors opened. 3 people in gray suits walked out. They were from Child Protective Services, and they had serious faces. "We're here to take custody of the children," the lead woman said. "We got a call about 3 minors sleeping outside unsupervised." Beloved listener, strangers in suits are trying to rip apart a family that's already hanging by a thread. These aren't just characters in a story. They represent every real family that's been broken by a system that doesn't understand love. If you won't subscribe to stand with families like this, then you're part of the problem. Don't let bureaucracy win over humanity. Ethan started crying behind his glasses. Ella hid behind the couch with her teddy bear. Emma stood up tall, even though she was shaking. "We're not homeless, we have a house and a mommy," Emma said in her bravest voice. "Don't take us away. Take us to our mom." "Little girl, your mother left you alone all night?" the CPS woman said. "That's neglect. We're taking you somewhere safe." Edward stepped in front of the children like a shield. "These kids are not going anywhere. Their mother is downstairs right now." He had received calls earlier from Frank, notifying him of the commotion downstairs. "Sir, you have no legal right to interfere," the woman said. "Please step aside." As the elevator climbed toward the 40th floor, Aurora's heart was beating so fast, she thought it might explode. She had been separated from her children for 8 hours, and every minute felt like a year. The elevator doors opened on the 40th floor. Aurora ran out like lightning. She could hear her children crying from inside Edward's office. "Mommy?" Emma screamed when she saw her mother running toward them. Aurora dropped to her knees and caught all 3 children in her arms. They were finally together again. For the first time in 8 hours, Aurora could breathe. But the CPS workers were still there, and they weren't giving up. "Ma'am, we still need to take the children for evaluation," the lead woman said. They were found sleeping outside unsupervised. Aurora looked up at this woman with fire in her eyes. "I would rather die than let you take my children." Edward stood up and walked over to his desk. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Hello, Governor Richardson? This is Edward Hands. I need a favor." Edward's phone call to Governor Richardson changed everything in 5 minutes. The governor owed Edward a big favor from years ago, and he made one quick call to the head of Child Services. "These children are going home with their mother," the CPS woman said with a sad face. "We're sorry for the trouble." Aurora hugged her babies so tight they could barely breathe. "We're going home," she whispered. But Edward wasn't done yet. He sat down at his big desk and wrote something on fancy paper. "Aurora, I want you to be my personal assistant. The job starts Monday. Your salary is $15,000 per month." Aurora's mouth fell open. She had never seen that much money in her whole life. "But sir, I don't have a college degree. I just worked at a diner." "You raised 3 children who were brave enough to sleep outside to help you," Edward said. "That's better than any degree. Also, I'll clear all your debt. I've also made arrangements for you to move into one of my mansions." He added. Aurora fell to her knees in tears. A family that was almost homeless this morning is getting a second chance at life. If you can't hit the subscribe button for a miracle this beautiful, then you don't believe in the power of kindness. 3 months later, Aurora and her children moved into a nice house in the suburbs. Edward visited them every Sunday for dinner. Aurora cooked the best meals he had ever tasted. The children called him Uncle Eddie, and he loved it more than being called Mr. Hans. The lonely man who used to eat dinner alone in his big empty house now had a family who loved him. Aurora worked hard every day and became the best assistant Edward ever had. A CEO who had everything but felt empty inside found the missing piece of his heart in 3 brave children and their incredible mother. If you don't subscribe to believing that kindness can change the world, then you're missing the whole point of why we tell these stories. If this story touched your heart, then subscribe to see more amazing stories of hope and kindness. Or tell us in the comments what story you'd like to hear next. Here's hoping you'd listen to my next story too. Lots of love.